Hey, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm gonna talk about top 5
best budget laptops for college students.
Starting at number 5.
Toshiba Satellite L55DTA5253. The buyers that Toshiba targets with its luxury Kirabook wouldn't touch a Satellite L55DTA5253 if Neiman Marcus was giving them away. That's too bad, because this laptop actually offers a much better price-to-performance ratio. Toshiba selected AMD's 2.0 GHz A6-5200 APU to power this $650 notebook. That chip features an integrated AMD Radeon HD 8400 graphics processor, which helped Toshiba secure a second-place finish in the games portion of our benchmark suite. But the machine's 6 GB of DDR3 memory runs at only 1,333 MHz, which held its performance back in comparison to some of the laptops equipped with Intel CPUs and faster DDR3/1600 memory. Toshiba's Satellite L55DTA5253 uses AMD's A6-5200 processor, which has an integrated Radeon HD 8400 graphics processor. Like most notebooks in its price range, the Satellite is composed primarily of plastic, but Toshiba's attractive material does a nice job of resisting smudges and fingerprints. The computer's lid and chassis also feel more rigid than most, though it does weigh a full pound more than the Acer Aspire E1, a significant consideration if you'll be carrying your laptop on your shoulder for extended periods every day. The Satellite L55DT features a 15.6-inch LED backlit touchscreen display with a native resolution of 1366 by 768 pixels. The display is attractive enough, if you position it just so. Text appears most legibly when the screen is tilted back, but bring it even slightly forward, as you might have to do when using the computer on your airline tray table, if the passenger in front of you decides to recline, and you may not be able to read it at all. The Toshiba Satellite is one of the more attractive notebooks on the market. If your arms get tired from reaching out to stroke the Satellite's screen, you can use its touchpad instead. The touchpad is centered beneath the keyboard, so it's off-center from wrist rest, but that's where it should be. It supports all of the usual Windows 8 gestures, including two-finger scrolling, zoom, rotate, and flip. And you can slide in from the right border to call up the charm bar, or slide it from the left to switch between applications. The setup lacks distinct left and right mouse buttons, but you can click the lower area of the pad to obtain the same actions. Toshiba took advantage of the display's width to provide a numeric keypad next to the alphanumeric keyboard. The half-size function keys in the top row have useful default actions mapped to them, including controls for such features as volume, brightness, and a media player. The island-style keyboard has short travel keys that nevertheless provide a desirable amount of tactile feedback while remaining nearly silent. I wouldn't have minded the half-size arrow keys if they hadn't been located so close to the edge of the wrist rest. The entire keyboard is recessed in a well, making it nearly impossible to tell whether your finger is tapping the up arrow or the down arrow without taking your eyes off the screen to look. The Satellite L55DTA5253 finished third in our Notebook Worldbench 8.1 benchmark suite, a scant 2 points behind Lenovo's Intel Core i5-powered IdeaPad Z400 Touch, but 16 points behind the Intel Haswell-powered Acer Aspire E1-572-6870. The Toshiba's 750 GB, 5,400 RPM hard drive helped it grab a second-place finish in the PC Mark 7 productivity component, but the faster CPU in the Acer Aspire more than compensated for that computer's smaller drive.
Coming at number 4.
Lenovo IdeaPad. This solidly built notebook features a great touchscreen display, an even better keyboard, and a huge and fast hard drive. But Lenovo's networking component choices are a bit disappointing. Lenovo laptops are the models of choice for many corporate IT departments, and the company manufactures some very good consumer-oriented machines, too. The IdeaPad Z400 Touch is a case in point. You wouldn't mistake it for a sleek ultrabook, it's thick and heavy, and its battery life is wretched, but the Z400 did finish second on Notebook Worldbench 8.1 in our 5-laptop competition. And despite Lenovo's copious use of plastic, the Z400 is built like a brick outhouse. Lenovo's IdeaPad Z400 Touch is a strong contender. Lenovo stuck with Intel's third-generation core processor for this budget-priced machine, pairing a 1.6 GHz Core i5-3230M with 6 GB of DDR/1600 memory. At 14.0 inches, its 1366 by 768 pixel display is much smaller than the Acer Aspire E1-572-6870's 15.6-inch display, but the IdeaPad Z400 boasts a 10-point touchscreen, whereas the Acer does not. The Z400 is an attractive PC, with charcoal-colored soft-touch paint on the outside and a pretty carbon fiber look on the inside. Lenovo's computer feels as rugged as Acer's feels fragile. Though the display exhibits a little flex, the lower chassis is as rigid as some all-metal bodies I've tried to bend. The downside to the solid construction is weight gain. Despite its smaller display, the Z400 outweighs the Acer by 0.7 pound. Still, it comes by most of that weight honestly. Lenovo provides 6 GB of memory, as against Acer's 4 GB, packs a 1 TB, 7,200 RPM hard drive, versus the Aspire's 500 GB drive, and includes a DVD burner. Acer provides no optical drive at all. The IdeaPad Z400 comes with the type of top-notch keyboard that Lenovo is famous for building. The island-style keyboard is fully backlit and feels great under the fingers. It lacks a dedicated numeric keypad, and there's no provision for temporarily assigning letter keys on the right side, an alternative function to serve as one, but I was happy to see the full-size arrow keys in the familiar inverted T formation at the far edge. Augmenting the touchscreen is a responsive trackpad that supports most Windows 8 gestures, including two-finger scrolling, swipe, zoom, and rotate. The trackpad doesn't have distinct right and left mouse buttons, but clicking in the lower right and left areas of the pad perform the same function. Unlike Lenovo's higher-end notebooks, the Z400 does not embed a track point in its keyboard. However, I found that the trackpad and the touchscreen were all I really needed. The IdeaPad Z400 took a solid second place in our Notebook Worldbench 8.1 benchmark competition, behind the Acer Aspire E1-572-6870, with a score of 132, marking it as 1.3 times faster than our reference Asus VivoBook S550ca, which comes outfitted with a 24 GB SSD cache for its hard drive.
At number 3.
HP Pavilion TouchSmart 11ZE000. HP's Pavilion TouchSmart 11ZE000 is one of the smallest, lightest, and least expensive notebooks we've ever reviewed. It's also one of the slowest, finishing dead last on nearly every criterion in our 5-system roundup except two important ones: weight and battery life. Despite carrying a price tag of just $410, this Pavilion has a touchscreen. It measures just 11.6 inches, but delivers 10-point touch and the same 1366 by 768 pixel resolution as the other budget notebooks we looked at. Once you get over its diminutive size, you realize that the display is actually pretty good. Though it has a minor issue with vertical off-axis viewing, it's much better than the screen on the Toshiba T-Satellite L55DTA5253. Augmenting the Pavilion's touchscreen is a trackpad that supports Windows 8 gestures such as two-finger scrolling, zoom, and rotate. Mechanical right and left mouse buttons are situated beneath the pad. The HP Pavilion TouchSmart 11ZE000 is a very inexpensive touchscreen laptop. Apart from its small size, the Pavilion doesn't look like a cheap PC. Though its case is composed almost entirely of plastic, the finishes on the lid and chassis are dead ringers for brushed aluminum, and the computer feels very sturdy despite being just 0.86 inch thick. Although this laptop was one of the lightest we considered for our roundup, its 3.4-pound heft is not especially impressive for its overall size. As you might expect, the most powerful notebooks also had the shortest battery life. If you have large fingers, you won't like the reduced size of the Pavilion's non-backlit keyboard. The keys are only slightly smaller than average, but the difference drove me crazy during touch typing sessions. The laptop is too small to accommodate a numeric keypad, too, and I loathe its arrow keys design. Rather than laying them out in the familiar inverted T formation, HP made the right and left keys oversize, and the up and down keys half-size, and bookend by the other two. The FN keys have common tasks, such as volume and media player control, assigned to them by default, so you don't have to hold down a second key to use them for those purposes. Speaking of media, the Pavilion has surprisingly good speakers, augmented by DTS sound plus audio processing software. Egad, is this computer ever slow? Much of the blame can be laid at the 1 GHz AMD A4-1250 processor that runs the show. This is paired with 4 GB of DDR3/1333 memory, which HP says is upgradable to 8 GB. But since the machine has only one DIMM slot, you'll need to toss the existing 4 GB DIMM to do so, unless you buy the 8 GB version at the outset. Our review model came with a 500 GB hard drive upgrade. The stock machine packs a 320 GB hard drive, but both drives spin their platters at an unhurried 5,400 RPM. There is no SSD option available, and the only optical drive option is external. The Pavilion TouchSmart's pitiful notebook Worldbench 8.1 score of 64 matches that of the $539 Dell Latitude 3330, but its scores on most of the other benchmarks are significantly worse than the Dell's. For example, the Latitude earned a PC Mark 7 productivity score of 932, versus the Pavilion's mark of 348. And the HP scores on our media editing and encoding tests were off the chart bad. On the plus side, the superior graphics processor integrated into the AMD A4 processor helped level the playing field in at least some of our gaming benchmarks. One of the ways that HP kept this computer's price so slow was by provisioning it with cheap networking capabilities. The Realtek RTL8188EE Wi-Fi adapter is a single-band 802.11n model that supports a maximum physical link rate of just 150 megabits per second, and its hardwired Ethernet adapter maxes out at 100 megabits per second. HP's Pavilion TouchSmart is less than 1 inch thick, but it's rather heavy for its size. For better wireless networking performance, you can plug an adapter into one of the Pavilion's USB ports. It has 2 USB 3.0 ports and 1 USB 2.0 port, plus a multi-format media card reader. HP provides both HDMI and VGA video outputs. The HP Pavilion TouchSmart 11ZE000 is tough to beat on price. You get a lot of computer for the money. Its closest rival in price, Dell's Latitude 3330, costs $100 more, doesn't have a touchscreen, and carries a smaller hard drive. The Dell is slightly faster and has a larger display, but I think the TouchSmart 11Z is a better value in the long run.
Number 2 of my list.
Dell Latitude 3330. If someone tells you, dude, you're getting a Dell, in reference to the Latitude 3330, run away. Dell makes plenty of good computers, but this isn't one of them. Admittedly, the Latitude 3330 didn't burst into flames or poke anyone's eye out during our testing. But you have many better choices in the same price range. Though one of the 5 budget notebooks in this roundup, HP's Pavilion TouchSmart 11ZE000, delivered even lower performance than this one, probably because it has an even less powerful CPU than the Dell's 1.5 GHz Intel Core i3-2375M. The HP also costs $110 less than the Latitude 3330 and has a 10-point touchscreen. The Dell's 13.3-inch, 1366 by 768 pixel display doesn't support touch, though its trackpad does support simple gestures such as 2-finger scrolling. The Latitude has only 4 GB of DDR/1600 memory, but an open and readily accessible slot accommodates a second module to double its memory. Its puny 320 GB, 5,400 RPM hard drive is similarly easy to access and upgrade. And this is one of only 2 notebooks in our roundup to include a removable and upgradable battery, the other one again being the HP Pavilion. One component that won't be easy to swap out is the Dell Wireless 1504 single-band, 2.4 GHz, 1x1, 802.11n Wi-Fi adapter, which delivers a physical link rate of just 150 megabits per second. The laptop doesn't provide Bluetooth support either. But it does have a gigabit Ethernet interface. Unlike most of the notebooks in this price range, the Latitude 3330's chassis contains some aluminum elements that render it considerably more rigid than the other machines we looked at. The lid, on the other hand, is rather flimsy, and the display inside doesn't feature edge-to-edge glass, as most of the others do. The PC Mark 7 productivity element of our benchmark suite evaluates a system's performance with everyday office tasks. The Latitude 3330's display isn't wide enough to accommodate a deck with both a full-size keyboard and a numeric keypad, but the system's arrow keys are full-size and not easily mistaken for anything else. Apart from not being backlit, the island-style keyboard is well-designed and a joy to type on, delivering firm but springy tactile feedback. The function keys in the top row play their traditional roles, so you'll need to hold down the FN key and tap them to access their alternative assignments, such as controlling a media player. The Latitude 3330 tied for dead last in our Notebook Worldbench 8.1 benchmark. Its overall score of 64 was more than 35% slower than our reference Asus VivoBook S550ca. Drilling down into some of the individual benchmarks from that suite, I note that the Dell finished next to last in the PC Mark 7 productivity benchmark and the BioShock Infinite test, beating out only the HP Pavilion TouchSmart 11ZE000.
And number 1.
Acer Aspire E1-572-6870. For general use, Acer's Aspire E1 is the clear winner in this roundup. Acer crams a lot of value into this laptop's $580 price tag, including a Haswell-class CPU, Intel's 1.6 GHz Core i5-4200U, and a 15.6-inch LED backlit display with native resolution of 1366 by 768 pixels. Though Acer uses quite a bit of plastic in the Aspire E1's design, you won't be ashamed to pull the notebook out of your bag. A smooth finish and rich color, Acer calls it clarinet black, make the 1-inch thick machine very attractive. The chassis and lid, on the other hand, exhibit quite a bit of flex, so you won't want to subject this machine to rough handling. The upside to all the plastic is low weight. At 4.6 pounds, this laptop has an advantage of more than 1 pound over the other 15.6-inch models I looked at, and it weighs just over a pound more than the ones with smaller displays. Capitalizing on the display's generous size, Acer includes a full-size keyboard and a numeric keypad on the Aspire E1's deck. I expected the island-style keyboard to be somewhat flimsy, but I was pleasantly surprised by its solid tactile feedback. It's not backlit and it's a trifle noisy, but I have no complaints about how it felt under my fingertips. The Aspire E1's display is plenty bright, producing vivid photos and videos, but off-axis viewing is merely adequate. Acer also shaved a few bucks off the Aspire E1's asking price by not including a touchscreen, but its highly responsive trackpad supports several Windows 8 gestures, including 2-finger scrolling, zoom, rotate, and flip. You can also slide in from the right to open the charm bar, and slide in from the left to switch between applications. The trackpad, which has a wide bar at its base that provides both right and left mouse button functions, is off-center in relation to the display, but dead center to the keyboard. It looks a little odd until you lay your hands on the keyboard's home row. The Aspire E1 has only 4 GB of DDR3/1600 memory, but you can open it up and pop in a second module to double that amount to 8 GB. Storage takes the form of a 500 GB, 5,400 RPM hard drive. There's no SSD to handle cache or anything else, and I noticed what appears to be an empty bay where an optical drive might go. Acer's machine delivered a Notebook Worldbench 8.1 score of 177, the best of the group by a wide margin. It also outperformed our reference platform, an Asus VivoBook S550ca, which has both an SSD and a touchscreen, but costs more than any of the systems reviewed here. Diving into the individual components in our test suite, the Acer performed better than the rest of the field in the PC Mark Productivity Suite, but Lenovo's IdeaPad Z400, which has a larger and faster hard drive, handled our collection of media editing and encoding tasks better.
Check out this video description for latest price and more informations. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe and stay tuned.